What is going on, everybody? James Hancock here. I'm back with a spoiler-free review for Drive Away Dolls, which is opening this coming Friday, and I very rarely get to say this on this channel, but I saw a pretty good comedy that I really enjoyed. That's something you rarely hear coming out of this channel unless I'm waxing poetic about the glories of the past, but technically, this movie is a late 90s movie. It was written in the late 90s. It's about the late 90s. Originally, it was written about the period in which it takes place, but it took so long to get made, it became a period piece. But you can feel that late 90s spirit all over it because it was directed by motherfucking Ethan Coen. Not Joel and Ethan Coen, but just Ethan Coen. Joel went off and did Macbeth a few years ago. Ethan did this, and they're going to get back together for a few more projects. They have a horror film that they're talking about. I think it's called, actually, there's a comedy called Honey Don't. I don't know if that's the horror film or not. It's about a cult leader, but I'm fired up to see them back together. But for this film, Ethan's actually co-working or co-writing with his wife, Tricia Cooke. Tricia Cooke, a lot of this movie is autobiographical about her lifestyle once upon a time, and apparently still to some degree because while Ethan Coen and Tricia Cooke are married and they are, obviously collaborating on this, they also have an open relationship where they're allowed to kind of fool around on the side. And I should also add that Tricia Cooke has worked as an editor on most of your favorite Coen Brothers movies. She worked on Miller's Crossing, Barton Fink. I'm not going to include the Hudsucker Proxy, but she did work on that. She worked on Fargo, which I'm sure is a lot of people's favorites. The Big Lebowski. Jesus Christ, O Brother Where Art Thou? And The Man Who Wasn't There. She's worked on a lot of the good ones, and she's also worked on the side on films like The Notorious Betty Page, which is great for very obvious reasons. But I thought it was an interesting experiment to see what kind of story does Ethan Coen want to craft in the absence of his brother, and it's like what ingredients do the two brothers bring to the table. And I don't want to make any sweeping generalizations based on two standalone movies, but at least with this movie, Drive Away Dolls, there's a heavy emphasis on just shits and giggles, fun, and just mild to occasional like sharp laughter throughout. I was kind of just smiling and giggling throughout, and then every once in a while like something would happen that was just totally bananas, and I would cackle like a hyena and that sort of thing. And the crowd seemed to be into it. It wasn't like one of those thunderous comedies where the whole crowd is into it, but I saw it at the Alamo Drafthouse in downtown Brooklyn, and it was definitely the right crowd. I guess they probably did some market research, like where is the greatest likelihood to have a successful screening? But it's a huge screening room at the Alamo Drafthouse, and they're building 5 more screens at that location in 70 millimeter, 35 millimeter, 4K, and there are a few other formats. But if you're ever in the New York area or the Brooklyn area, and you want to go to a kick-ass theater, that is where you should go because filmmakers like Ethan Coen show up and talk about their work. But I do find it interesting that both Joel Coen and Ethan Coen are quite literally married to people that they've collaborated with many times. Obviously, Joel Coen is married to Frances McDormand, who's been there since the beginning, since Blood Simple. And speaking of Blood Simple, they showed the original Blood Simple trailer before the movie. It was basically a fake trailer for a movie that did not exist, starring Bruce Campbell in order to raise money for the eventual film. But in that trailer for Blood Simple, it's got a lot of those great like Evil Dead style shots and that sort of thing that the Coen Joel Coen had edited Evil Dead, but I don't want to get sidetracked about all that. But the Alamo Drafthouse, they go the extra mile with their screenings. Like right before the movie started, they were showing a trailer for the Merchant Ivory film, The Europeans. I was like, that's random. What the fuck's going on here? But then about halfway through the movie, I was like, oh, I get it, because one of the central characters in Drive Away Dolls loves reading Henry James, and Henry James wrote the book that the Merchant Ivory team was adapting. But what is Drive Away Dolls? The official description from Wikipedia is, it's an upcoming American comedy road film directed by Ethan Coen. Coen wrote the screenplay and edited the film with his wife, Tricia Cooke. They also produced the film with Robert Graff and Working Title Films' Tim Bevan and Eric Fellner. It stars Margaret Qualley, Geraldine Viswanathan, if I'm saying her last name at all correctly, Beanie Feldstein, Coleman Domingo, Pedro Pascal, Bill Camp, and Matt Damon. But that description leaves a little bit to be desired or leaves too much to the imagination. Check out this poster for Drive Away Dolls where you got these spread eagle legs with cowboy boots, because this is a lesbian road drama or road comedy. And there are a lot of words that get kind of thrown around willy-nilly throughout the movie that I'm sure some people would say, like, don't use those words. It's not your privilege to use those words, blah, blah, blah. But the movie was originally called Drive Away Dykes, and that word is used liberally throughout the entire movie. So if you're uncomfortable with that word, I'm sorry, but it comes from the writer, it comes from the movie, and it's even employed within the film. Obviously, Focus Features decided to censor the title and call it Drive Away Dolls, which doesn't quite have the same punch. But in the late 90s, filmmakers were coming up with all sorts of crazy titles for movies. Like, there's a title that I won't even mention because it would get me terminated on YouTube. But look up the original title for the Todd Solondz film, Welcome to the Dollhouse. And it's a crazy fucking title. I don't know if it would have made the movie more successful or not, but late 90s. Gen X sensibility, people did not give a fuck. People had a sense of humor. And that sense of humor, coming from both Tricia Cooke as well as Ethan Coen, is just imbued through every single frame of this flick. And because the whole movie is kind of over the top and hyper stylized and just kind of frenzied in its overall atmosphere, not every character is going to seem equally entertaining for obvious reasons. I mean, anytime you're doing kind of something bordering on broad comedy, some people are going to take it just a tad too far. Like, I loved Margaret Qualley in this, but if somebody were to say that accent, I don't know what's going on there, I'd get it. But in the Q&A after the screening, Margaret Qualley said she showed up for her audition using her good old-fashioned North Carolina accent. She's born and raised from North Kakalaki. Her mother's Andie MacDowell, and Andie MacDowell has that like all-time great classic North Carolina accent. The North Carolina accent, if I were to try to sum it up, obviously, depending upon which city you're in, if it's rural or whatever, but it's a very laid-back, low-key, very friendly accent compared to some of the other more aggressive accents. But apparently Ethan Coen, he listened to her speak one time and said, no. Like, fuck all that North Carolina shit. I need Tommy Lee Jones. Like, Ethan Coen, he has a great ear for kind of like hill people and hasty dialogue and that sort of thing, but for this movie, he wanted her to crank it up a notch. So crank it up a notch she did. And if anyone's wondering why I place such heavy emphasis on the accents in this movie, it's because I lived in Greensboro, North Carolina for many years. I know those accents, and while this movie starts in Philadelphia, it works its way down the coast to, is it Tallahassee, Florida? Where the fuck do they go? I think it's Tallahassee. Anyway, they go to Florida, the Panhandle, but it's just this great road movie through North Carolina and Georgia and Florida where they basically hit, I mean, forgive the word, they hit every single dyke bar along the way and just have a wild time, all while a bunch of hired assassins are trying to kill them because unbeknownst to them, they're traveling in a car that's got two things in the trunk. And I'm not going to elaborate as to what those are, but you can see in the trailer, like the whole hook of the movie is a case of mistaken identity where these two girls show up. They're looking for a cheap way to get down to Florida, and so they volunteer to drive a car, and this car service, meanwhile, has like a side hustle where they work with some kind of sketchy individuals, but due to just happenstance, these girls end up with a car with a bunch of crazy shit in the trunk. They're driving along, and these two guys that are chasing them, I feel like the Coens, they really excel at kind of showing hitmen and or violent men who can kind of philosophize and be charming. Like, look at Steve Buscemi and what's his partner in crime's name in Fargo? But like, I'm blanking on the scary guy's name, but that movie is very serious and it's very deadly and has very high stakes. And yet, while they're driving along, it's still fucking hysterical. And so, yeah, Fargo, definitely one of the more serious movies. Even No Country for Old Men, which is probably the most serious movie that the Coens ever made, has moments of levity where I crack up like a maniac, even if the comedy is as dark as the pits of hell. But Drive Away Dolls is never that dark. It's occasionally like passionate and heartfelt, but on the whole, this is a movie with violence and beheadings and boobs aplenty and giant basement makeout parties and just all sorts of crazy shit. And so, yeah, I just found it to be an absolute delight. And the best part was, it's an 84-minute movie. Name the last time you saw an 84-minute funny comedy in the theater that works, where you didn't walk out saying like, oh, like, it was kind of good, but I hated this and I hated that. There was never a single scene. The only objections I had during the movie is like, oh, well, maybe that line's not quite as well written as the line that preceded. Or maybe that performance isn't quite as good as some of the others. But it was a very enjoyable movie, and I think it's probably going to be my first serious contender for my top 10 of 2024. And we've got some good stuff to look forward to. We've got Demon Slayer, the third movie, coming out this Thursday. We got Dune Part 2 for me coming out on Sunday. And then we've got Love Lies Bleeding like the week after that. And I don't even know if this was done on purpose or not, because Love Lies Bleeding is an A24 film. But for people who want to see like lesbians on the run, like a violent saga double feature, you could do Love Lies Bleeding followed by Drive Away Dolls, or the reverse, depending upon if you want your serious movie or your funny movie to come first or second. But yeah, I think it's going to become an unintentional, it's not going to be like a Barbenheimer sequel or double feature, but if somebody wanted to make the pitch in a couple weeks' time, like, hey, let's go out and do like the ultimate double feature of Drive Away Dolls and Love Lies Bleeding, that sounds like a very entertaining evening at the movies. Because in the end, even though I'm into a lot of different kinds of movies from around the world, from every point in movie history, I'm not that hard to please. If you give me some jokes, some nudity, and some violence, and some dazzling visual imagery, I'm pretty much good to go. I'm fine. And as I was watching this, I just realized like Ethan Coen, while he's no longer the young filmmaker making Raising Arizona, making me fucking laugh my balls off at age 10 or 11 years old, he still shoots with the energy and the style of a young filmmaker. Like every single moment in this movie, from the framing to the lighting to the camera movements to just like the transitions. The transitions are so cool. I've seen, I don't know how many thousands of movies. I've never seen a movie that does transitions the way this one does, because it's not enough just to do like a wipe or a dissolve. Like sometimes like the whole frame will kind of like move and like shove the other one out of the way, and almost like a bull charging into a scene. You're like, whoa, like they're trying to make every single moment just feel visually interesting or exciting, but it's not just for its own sake. It's always in the service of the story. But I guess it's just a sad commentary on the state of affairs in movies, where trying to make your movie pleasing to the eye is the exception as opposed to the norm. And speaking of the imagery, I should give a shout out to the cinematographer Ari Wegner, who I don't know if they've worked on a bunch of other Coen Brothers movies or not. Let's have a quick glance at their filmography. No, this is the first of any movie related to Joel or Ethan Coen. So yeah, bring it on. Hopefully they'll... I don't even know if Ari... Yeah, I'm assuming Ari's a guy, but hopefully they'll use him more in the future. He's got a very good eye. And in an era of visually bland and visually boring movies, I mean, I just saw Madam Web this past weekend, and it looks like it was shot by like an intern who just learned how to turn on the camera, where every single frame and the way every single scene is lit is designed to be as boring and uninteresting as humanly possible. Cinema is a visual medium, and as Joel Coen said when I saw him speak after a Macbeth screening at the New York Film Festival, he said if he had to like kind of sum up cinema in a few words, he would say cinema is about what goes in the frame and what doesn't go in the frame. Like choosing how to frame your shot. That is everything, because you like the filmmaker is like, they're controlling where the eye is going to look. And when they swing the camera that way, it's not like you can say, no, I want to keep looking over here. You got to go along for the ride. But if you're looking at a painting, your eyes can go wherever you want. If you're reading a comic, your eyes can go wherever you want. Or if you're reading a book, like you'll pause and go back. But when you're sitting in the theater, it's a passive medium. And so I like strong, visionary, bold directors. And Joel and Ethan Coen have understood that since day one, from Blood Simple up to the present day. And also I should give a shout out or a plug to my top 10 Coen Brothers video, which I did 2 years ago? Yeah, 2 years ago. I'll leave a link down below. I'm going to need to do an updated list at some point, because they've both released movies since then. Or maybe this is the first one, but I'm always happy to talk about the Coen Brothers under any circumstances, because they made my childhood in the 80s and 90s a happier one. But what else can we discuss without giving away any spoilers? Let's just go through the cast and give a shout out to whoever made a big impression. So Miley Cyrus, she's in there, and there's some truly wild psychedelic sequences where I was like, what is this coming from? Because the Coens do have a sentimental weakness for psychedelic imagery, which we saw in The Big Lebowski. We saw it in A Serious Man. They love all that psychedelic shit, and more power to them. But Miley Cyrus was totally game. I'm not going to say what those scenes involve, because it's a huge part of the plot, but sit back and enjoy the ride. I'd say Matt Damon was fine, but maybe his performance was a little one note or a little obvious. And yeah, there's a little bit of I wouldn't say political, there was no political axe to grind, but there's a little political commentary about the Bible Belt. And I think some people will roll their eyes back and say, all right, Matt Damon, like, can you at least pretend not to be totally predictable when it comes to politics? But he's totally fine. Pedro Pascal, he's not in this movie much, but Pedro Pascal, at least he's getting to be lighthearted. He's not going to be like so grim like in The Last of Us and stuff like that. And so Pedro Pascal actually does have a knack for comedy. If you see The Kingsman 2, The Golden Circle, he's fucking hilarious. He steals the show pretty much every step of the way. Bill Camp is Curly. Most of his best scenes are already in the trailer, but he's so fucking good. He's always good, and he's been doing great work for fucking, I don't know, how old is this guy? I feel like I've been watching him and stuff my entire life, but anyway, he's fantastic. But the real showstoppers, or the real show stealers, are C.J. Wilson and Joey Slotnick, who are these two minions working for the character played by Coleman Domingo, and they're trying to track down the stuff that's in the back of the car, being driven by these two girls. But they are just so fucking funny every step of the way, and just like the bickering and the shit talking and the observations about human nature. But I think the biggest surprise out of this movie is for me discovering Geraldine Viswanathan. And once again, I'm sure I'm completely butchering the pronunciation of her last name, but she is not from America, but never in a million years would you know it from her accent. She's actually Australian, But goddamn, she's just doing kind of a an accent-free American accent, but which works for the character she's playing. She's playing a character that's very buttoned up and kind of very straight-laced, in spite of the fact that in their free time they go into like these lesbian bars with like striptease contests and things like that, where like, all kinds of crazy shit's going on. Like, I don't care if you're the most red-blooded like straight dude who's ever lived, you're gonna enjoy Drive Away Dolls. Like, the nudity is for the ladies, but anyway, we get the I guess we get the leftovers, but the leftovers are just fine. It is a saucy erotic comedy, and we just so rarely see comedies with nudity ever. And I grew up on this steady diet of comedies with nudity, and I just feel like, yeah, comedy and nudity are just like horror and nudity, or just like, I mean, nudity goes well with pretty much any genre, except for maybe like a little like, a cartoon for small children or something like that. But even then, like if you watch Fantasia, they're naked, like little horse ladies or centaurs jumping around in that. So yeah, one of the first movies I ever saw in the theater was Clash of the Titans, a Greek mythology adventure movie for very young children. Even there, in the context of a PG movie, there was nudity. So I just don't understand the modern day aversion to nudity and the modern day aversion to comedy. I'm wearing a t-shirt which just arrived in the mail. And you get a special prize if you can identify the late 70s classic that the shirt comes from. But I'm just sick to death of people having this aversion to the comedy genre. Like, we're getting way too many movies now that are designed for everybody, but actually designed for no one. Or they're designed for the global marketplace, and then they just fucking die. It's like, give me market segmentation. I've heard some people describing it as like the balkanization of entertainment, which is a very harsh word, because when you hear balkanization, you think, oh, you're thinking, a lot of different territories at war with each other. But when I was in business school, when I was taking microeconomics and macroeconomics, there's nothing wrong with a little market segmentation, like figure out who is your audience. And I suspect that co-writer Tricia Cooke, she knew exactly who she was writing this for, and she's like, yeah, we're going to capture my lifestyle of hell raising at that time. And so while I enjoy Drive Away Dolls, I suspect there's an audience out there that's like, women in their 40s, 50s, and 60s who are just going to feel like this movie is their Big Lebowski. This is going to be the movie, or like their Bonnie and Clyde, or their True Romance. Road trips are better comparisons, and I feel like road trips can be mean and nasty, like Natural Born Killers, or they can be fucking hilarious, like Dumb and Dumber. Like, there's nothing better than a road trip, because in terms of like your shots, half your movie is already storyboarded for you in advance. Just make it beautiful, make it look great, and you're off to the races. But yeah, I realize I'm all over the place with this review, because it's so rare where I get to walk out of a movie and just say, hey, you know what? I had a good time at the movies tonight. It wasn't too heavy-handed. It wasn't too preachy. And you would suspect, oh, it's 2024, a movie about two lesbians on the run, that it's going to exploit every opportunity to give us a lecture or to force-feed us, some agenda of some kind. Not once. Never once in this entire movie did I get the feeling that anybody was trying to force feed me anything other than an entertaining evening at the movies that is absolutely worth putting down some money to see. But who else have I not mentioned? All right, because I've been going pretty far at this point without any real criticisms. Beanie Feldstein, usually she's pretty goddamn funny, but maybe she got the memo to crank things up a bit, but then she just kind of took the ball and ran with it. Because if I were to criticize any actor in this whole movie for being just a tad over the top, and Margaret Qualley's already pretty far out there, but Beanie Feldstein, I wouldn't say she was a disappointment. She just wasn't as engaging as the two leads, Margaret and Geraldine, who were just born to work together. Their chemistry is absolutely fucking incredible. And because they're so different from one another, and their lifestyles are such polar opposites in spite of having the same sexual orientation, but what it reminded me of a little bit, now that I think about it, was Jeff Bridges and John Goodman in The Big Lebowski, where those two guys, obviously Donnie's like part of the scene as well, but he's not like part of like the central duo, but those two guys, they could not have less in common. One's a Vietnam vet, one's a total stoner or surfer or loser guy, but like they're brothers. Like, they get along, they're thick as thieves, and all they do is kind of like insult one another and piss and moan, but they always have each other's back. And the same thing holds true here. These two characters, Marion and Jamie, they talk shit the entire movie. They're constantly getting in each other's face about one thing after another, but they do have each other's back, and they're just delightful to watch in action. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if some people come away from this movie liking it even more than I did, and I liked it quite a bit. So there it is. I'm going to recommend everybody hunt down Drive Away Dolls, have a laugh. Enjoy the dildos, enjoy the beheadings, enjoy the violence, enjoy the car chases, enjoy all the mayhem. I mean, it's like once every 5 years that we actually get like a lighthearted sex comedy that actually works and delivers and is not heavy-handed and pandering and didactic and annoying as fucking hell, you can just eat your popcorn, drink your Coke, sip. I had a pepperoni pizza while I was watching because it's the Alamo Drafthouse, and their pizza's not bad. But yeah, go to an Alamo Drafthouse, because at the Alamo Drafthouse, if somebody's on their phone or they're talking, they will throw them out on their ass. And I actually was the last seat in the entire theater. It's a huge auditorium, but I got the very last seat in the place. So usually I'm up close because I don't have to worry about seeing people's phones. But this time I was in the very back row, which actually makes the screen kind of, look a little bit more pleasing to the eye. But every once in a while, I'd scan the whole crowd. Not a single phone on in the entire place, because at the Alamo Drafthouse, it is for movie lovers, people who actually want to watch the movie that they've paid to see. And at the risk of sounding heavy-handed myself, if you're 15 or 16 and no one ever taught you better because you just came of age at a time where no one was going to the movies, if you're paying for a show, keep in mind, everybody in the theater is also paying to see the show. And some people want to get their money's worth for whenever they're paying to see it. And if you want to talk with your friends and show them stupid fucking videos, go to a bar. That's what bars are for. But maybe that's all I've got to say. So I'll be paying close attention to the news moving forward to see what Joel and Ethan might be doing. I mean, these are two guys. They've been entertaining me my entire life. I love their filmography. Obviously, I have my own personal favorites. So if you want to see what my favorites are, check out my top 10 video and feel free to push back. I feel like they've got such a deep filmography, so many incredible movies. There's a lot of room for discussion in terms of what their best movies might be. But I think that's all I have to say. So thank you so much for sticking with me and listening to my kind of meandering rant. I've had too much caffeine, as is my usual custom, but I hope everybody has an amazing week. Hope everybody has an amazing upcoming weekend at the movies. I'll be reviewing Demon Slayer, I think it's called To the Hashira Training. I think I'm getting the title right, but anyway, the latest Demon Slayer movie is coming out on Thursday. I'll be seeing that, and I'll be reviewing Dune Part 2 on Sunday, so plenty of reviews to look forward to on this challenge, I am challenged on this channel in the not so distant future. So remember to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss future videos. But I can't thank you for watching, but more importantly, as always, onwards and upwards.